Welcome to Break Free from Corporate, the only podcast dedicated to bringing you business success secrets from leading entrepreneurs with one thing in common. They left the corporate world, became their own boss, and are now living incredible lives. To access previous and all future episodes, visit breakfreefromcorporate.com and subscribe today.
All right, well, welcome everyone. This is Gavin Sequeira, and I'm really excited to bring you another fantastic podcast with our Break Free from Corporate series. So today we've got Alex with us, and Alex, can you hear us? Are you there?
Yeah, I am here. Thanks, Gavin. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be here.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now, how do I pronounce your last name, Alex? Is it?
It's Barbas, so it's Greek.
Yeah, I thought it's okay. Great. One of the reasons I actually wanted to get Alex on our podcast is because Alex actually did quite a bit of work helping me in my business with LinkedIn. And obviously that's going to be one thing we talk about during the course of this chat. But I'm really fascinated, Alex, by your background and what you used to do and the journey that you took to kind of get out of that corporate world and get into your own business. And obviously now you're running a successful business and it's growing and it's really cool. But gee, you've done some interesting things in the past. And I'd love for you to share with our audience, just where you started from, and kind of the journey you took. So maybe a little bit of your backstory. But firstly, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. So, at the moment, I'm running a B2B agency, and that is focused more so on LinkedIn. But I suppose to rewind, to take it back to a little bit more about my background. So it actually didn't start anywhere close to marketing, which is probably where a lot of marketers are in that sort of window of not starting in marketing. They sort of chop and change and they go from one thing to another. And that was certainly my pathway. So I suppose after school, I got into university and I did a 6-month course in, it is, funnily enough, it was in marketing and economics, but I did that for 6 months and I was kind of just feeling that I didn't really want to be at uni anymore. It wasn't something that was really driving a passion for me. And so I actually reached out to one of my brother's friends who was in the army at the time, in the Australian Army, as a rifleman. And I was always someone who I still do to this day, enjoy a challenge and enjoy doing something different. And, being quite physically fit as well, I wanted to give that a crack. So I deferred from university and applied to be a rifleman in the Australian Army. Now, this was in 2010, I believe. So, quite
that's
some
pretty
time.
Cool.
Yeah. So I was 18 at the time. So, applied for the Army and managed to get in. And then there was about a 5 to 6 month window where I was getting when I was meant to start. So in between that time, I thought, well, there's probably no point in going back to uni, so I'll pick up some work. And this was probably one of my favorite jobs I've actually ever had, which was I was a courier for toll.
Oh, wow.
So very, very different again. So I had some family friends who were in that business, and I decided to do that, and that was full time. So it was and that was probably where a little bit of that sort of entrepreneurial journey kind of started, because you could work your own hours. Your capacity for work could be anywhere from Monday to late night on, let's say, Thursday, to then early morning Saturday morning. So the more that you work, the more that you made. So I kind of dug sunk my teeth into that. And that was great. It was a lot of fun because like I said, you can work your own hours, but you also were just meeting a lot of different business people, and you're establishing your own relationships. So that was a whole lot of fun for 6 months. And then I was deployed to then start my infantry training, which is over in Kapuka, over in Wagga Wagga.
Wow.
So in New South Wales, which was great. And then from there, there was there was more training in New South Wales and Singleton. And then from there stayed on for about another 12 months which was more so training the new recruits.
So just talking about, I mean, obviously we'll go through, the different things you did to get to where you are now, but just focusing a little bit on done some time in the army and not many people have done things like that, but I do know a number of people that are in the defense force and in the Navy or in the army, and gee, the experience you get out of doing something like that, no matter how long you've been in there, is just priceless. Like, you would have learned a lot of great skills and discipline and all sorts of things there, I'm sure.
Yeah, I definitely believe having and I think I had some good discipline before going in there, but then obviously that just really accelerated that. But I also think just having a really, really good structure is paramount to any kind of success, whether you're in the army or whether you're running a business. Having structure and systems and processes set up, it's very, very important. And I think that's really what I learnt through that and what I apply to everyday life now. Awesome.
And then you went on after you were a courier, which would have been an exciting thing to be on the road and sort of being out and about and doing different things. Where did you go from there?
So after I was a courier to then into the army, and then after the army, that wrapped up around about 2012, middle of 2012. And when I was in the army, I managed to save quite a bit of money because I just wasn't spending anything. You looked after very, very well. Just didn't really have a lot of expenses, so I saved quite a bit, and then went traveling through Europe. With a few mates, and that was quite a long time, and that was sort of the unwinding from, I suppose, infantry life, which I think I needed. And then after those 6 months, I then actually went back to uni. So I was in the middle of deciding, whether or not I want to go full time in another sort of job capacity, or whether I wanted to go back into uni. So I elected to go back to university and started studying construction and economics with Bachelor of Applied Science.
Fantastic. What was the drive to go back to study? Like, what, was there something did you think, were you thinking like, okay, I need to now focus on a career, and like I need to maybe get into a particular field, or I mean, like, what was the decision to do that?
Yeah, I think it was a decision that I was thinking, okay, well, I can either go back to university or work full time. And I think the degree that I selected, probably, I wish I could go back and tell myself, hey, this probably isn't the best thing for you. You should get back into marketing because that's what you like, and that's sort of where your knowledge sits. But it was a degree that I had a few friends who had gone through and done it, and I could see, the success behind it. And also being in WA, there's a big mining, construction, oil and energy boom at the time. I was probably catching more towards the back end of that, but I thought that, hey, this is, going to go on for life. And obviously it still really is quite large in WA. It's a massive sector, but I kind of just wanted to start something that I knew I could get through, and I knew that uni was always a pathway. And I think being very traditional, brothers gone through uni, a lot of family, a lot of friends, a lot of cousins had gone through that path. So I thought, hey, this is probably, the next step for me.
And it's probably also expected of you, isn't it? I mean, if everyone in your family and close friends and things like that have gone down a certain path, you're almost compelled to do the same, aren't you? In some way.
You're right. And I think, like I said, if I had my time again, it's hindsight's a nice thing, because you can always say, hey, if I had my time again, I wouldn't have done this, but then obviously that wouldn't have led to what I'm doing today. So, I think a lot of people are forced into university, or they take it just for the sake of them, doing something. And I do agree with that. You shouldn't just not do anything and just sit at home and not be learning, not be educating yourself. And I think, again, one of the really good things about university is it does teach you, again, a lot about structure. And if you can treat university very much like you would a job, then again, it sets you up for the long term when you do eventually move into that corporate world.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point you made. I mean, university is so different to school, where school you've got teachers looking over your shoulder and you've got homework and you've got there's people checking and you get a report card and all of that. When you're at university, it's the next level learning. Like, you really have to drive yourself. There's no one that's going to force you to turn up to class. If you don't turn up, you don't, you get the results you deserve. But one of the other benefits is you actually come in touch with a lot of other types of people. You mix with a lot of different groups that you probably otherwise you wouldn't have access to. So there's all that other social learning that you get, and you get to experience a lot of other things as well. So look, it's a great experience. Is it for everyone? Maybe, maybe not. And yeah, hindsight is a wonderful thing. But I'm sure if you hadn't have done that, you probably wouldn't be where you are today.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people can say the same things for when bad situations happen or good situations happen. It's you always reflect back and think, hey, well, if that didn't happen, then I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, cool. Now, I know in a previous chat you told me you worked for Nike, didn't you?
Yeah, correct. So a bit of another shift. So in about my third year of studying, I kind of knew, you have that gut feeling of, hey, this just isn't for me. I just can't see myself in this industry. And I had done some work. It's not as if I hadn't given it a red hot crack. I'd done some work at a few engineering firms. And I just thought, look, this just isn't entirely for me. And I picked up some work in the retail division of Nike. And so I started working there this would have been 2016, I believe. And with that, I just fell in love with the brand. I've always been someone who loves sports, but I really enjoyed, the brand and what they were building. They've got such a good vision. They're so innovative, very, very forward thinking. And so I think with that, I really bought into the brand, and I sort of was working through the retail and decided, look, I'd really like to give working at the headquarters, which was over in Melbourne, a crack as well. So I started reaching out through to them, and eventually moved over to the headquarters around about a year later. It would have been maybe a year and a half later. So moved into the head office as the in their operations and in their operations team, and then moved up to head of customer service for Australia and New Zealand, which was very interesting as well.
Yeah. Well, see, that you're right in the thick of corporate, aren't you? I mean, Nike's a multi-billion-dollar company, and they're a fantastic brand, household name, and it would have been a great experience, really. I mean, what were some of the things you took out of that role?
Yeah, it's fantastic experience. That was probably really the first major corporate role that I had, and I think the biggest takeaway from it was I think a lot of the relationships that I was developing, not only from the customer side of things, but also from the sales side of things. I could see I had my pulse, finger on the pulse in terms of when the customer would come into different stores and what their purchasing processes were, but also from the store owner, the store level, and how their thought process was into selling the products, and I guess utilizing both of those avenues. That kind of really emphasized a lot of my sales ability.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so, and what happened after Nike? Like, so how did you then, what made you then shift or change? Because then I think you went really into a different focus again, did you not?
Yeah. So at Nike, it was around about it would have been 2017, middle of 2017. There was what they call a restructure, which I'm sure you know what that means.
Yeah, everybody heard that recently as well. So yeah. No, sure.
Yeah. And so office-wide email went out about the restructuring, and it happens very, very quickly. Literally, I believe it was a Monday morning. I came in and saw the email, and then there was another email that came through saying, hey, there's a conversation that's going to take place in about an hour with yourself, the head of HR, head of operations, and I think it might have been the CFO, one of those C-suite level executives, and I just you can see the writing on the wall, right? I knew exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
And even before my meeting, which was scheduled in early in the morning, there were people who had meetings before me, and they were coming back and packing up their things. And I think it was myself and about 20 others, 21, I believe it was, who were restructured, I suppose. But I was very, very fortunate in that I still maintained my job, but just was pushed back to another role.
Yeah.
And so from there, that was really one of those situations where it transitions your life into a whole nother different direction.
Yeah.
So when that happened, Nike was everything. It was my, obviously my main source of income, and just fully relied on it. And that opened my eyes up to different avenues, and again, sort of boosted my entrepreneurial pathway, because I thought, hey, I don't ever want for this to happen ever again. I was very fortunate that I didn't have kids, I didn't have a mortgage, I didn't have any of those real, I guess, things tied down to me that could have really made the situation a whole lot worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, that happened, and I thought to myself, okay, well, I need to look at other avenues of creating a life where this doesn't happen. And I always sort of had a little bit of entrepreneurial, I guess, background into what I wanted to do, but it was then just about piecing the different puzzles together. But yeah, like I said, it was one of those situations that when it happens, it's awful. But looking back on it, I wouldn't be where I am here today without that happening.
No, definitely. It's what they also call sometimes an inflection point, or like a point of, like, it's where your life really takes a turn. You can literally put, so many things happen in our lives, but you can always count on one or two or three very, very specific points in time that literally took your life on a different path. And sometimes, people are, when you're in the moment, going through being made redundant or being told, your job's been restructured and all, it can be the worst thing that could possibly happen in that time. However, looking back, you'd be amazed, perhaps that was meant to happen to now shift you into a different direction. And it looks like, it obviously did that for you.
Yeah, no, it certainly did. And I started just thinking in a totally different, my thought process was just totally different. It was a new paradigm in terms of my thinking of, okay, well, how can I not make this happen again? What are some ways to start my own business or start a side hustle or do something different where, I don't have to rely on one source of income, one thing. And if that breaks, then that puts obviously a lot of stress on yourself.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so that's when you really then, I think, started to go into your own space, really. I mean, did you know what it was you wanted to do at that point? Or like, how did you kind of branch out now to try and figure out, either what you wanted to do or I guess, back yourself on your thoughts, your ideas? Like, how did you then transition yourself to, let's say, being your own boss?
Yeah, so when that happened, around about a month or two later, I started my own, I suppose, side hustle was the first piece, which was selling clothing online.
Okay.
And it was, very, very small. And what was happening was I was working at Nike, but also had this side hustle, and I could see that side hustle was picking up a bit, but I didn't want to go all in on it because I wasn't 100% all in on it myself. I kind of just wanted to test the waters again with that entrepreneurial sort of thought process in mind. But I could see that it, could have some legs, and I thought, okay, well, this is something that I'd like to explore perhaps later down the track. But from Nike, I then actually went to a digital marketing agency in Melbourne called Megaphone Marketing, and I took a lot of my sales experience there and started a role as a business developer at the agency, and I was there for around about 6 to 9 months there, learning really about the digital marketing side of things. And that was something that I always had interest in. But I think, again, just learning more from them, taking all the knowledge from Nike plus the agency and the background as to what I had with other roles really set me up for what I'm doing now. So I was working there for 6 to 9 months, and then at the end of the year I decided to move back to Perth. So from Perth originally I was working in Melbourne, so moved back to the West Coast and sort of put some pieces together then of, okay, if I would like to do what I'd like to do, I want to set that up in a way that's, tailored to myself, and I could see some really good opportunity just in, of course, the digital marketing space and the online space.
No, fantastic. Well, it's interesting you were telling me when you went to uni, you didn't quite see the value of like finishing that initial course that you were in, but then you went back down the track to do a different one. I've talked to a lot of people, Alex, in the past about just, uni, college, like, is it necessary? Like, what do you think? And quite often, like, we talk about the different jobs that we do over the course of many years. And someone actually said it to me really well, and I'll never forget. I can't remember who it was who told me this now, because I've heard it a couple of times, but your work, so forget about your background necessarily, what you studied at university or TAFE or college, even if you didn't do any of that. It's the work experience that you do that can set you up for success. So let's say you've worked at 3 or 4 different places or half a dozen places or even 1 or 2 places for a period of time. If you think strategically on like what you're doing in your job and what you can learn and what you can do in the next role and the next job, and you almost look at your job or your career as paid experience, like you're being paid to learn something, and obviously you're contributing back to the company and you're producing results for them, but at the same time you're also learning for yourself. You're gaining skills, and you can choose the type of work that you want to do or the jobs that you do to learn stuff. So for example, if you're not good at marketing, you could try to learn marketing, get into a part of the organization or a company where you're exposed to that. So you start learning those skills, and, it'll be invaluable experience that if you ever were to start a business or get into business, you'd be grateful you had that experience, or business development or anything like that. So the fact that you've done a few different roles and you've picked up skills along the way, I think would have helped you heaps in setting up your business.
Yeah, you're dead right. And I think the other thing is that a lot of entrepreneurs or people who go on to do their own thing, you can always kind of pick those people. Even when I was working with the agency, I know a few of them in the sales team have gone off and now done their own thing, and it all sort of makes sense that now that they're in that position, why they're doing that, because when they were working for the agency or when they were working in general, you can kind of see that they would make a good, boss, or they would be really good in their own, business or doing their own thing. So, yeah, I very much agree in that. And there are some people who love the 9 to 5, they enjoy the environment, and that's them. And they probably don't have as much of an itch to go out and do their own thing. And that's totally okay.
Definitely.
Nothing wrong with that.
Like you need people who just love what they do, and there are people who really love just working for someone else or working in that structure where they know that they know what they have to deliver, they know when to turn up, and they know when to clock off. And as far as they're concerned, that's the best deal they could get, and they're happy. And you know what? It works for everyone. But if you're listening to this right now, and right now you're in a situation where you're in a job, it's not really ticking your boxes, or you're kind of in a career that's sort of hit a bit of a plateau, or, you come up against a wall and you're not sure where the next step is. I guess just even hearing what you're saying, Alex, you might not be ready at this point to start a business, or you might not have any ideas on what to do, but you can start looking at, well, what are you interested in? What skills do you want to pick up? What areas kind of are you looking forward to growing in, and then pick that next job or the next career or the next company so that it ticks those boxes, and then try and formulate a plan. So maybe, if down the track you do want to do your own thing, start putting thought into it now and kind of work your way there. And maybe you need to do 2 or 3 more jobs to pick up certain skills so that when you do leave, or when the time is right, you've kind of got a few more bows in your quiver. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that actually, it makes so much sense because I probably leapt too quickly from corporate because in the start of last year, I was thinking, hey, I've probably just gone off and rushed and done these things far too quickly. And when you do it too quickly, it can put a lot more stress on yourself. It can put more stress on the business if things don't, pick up as quickly as what you would have liked. So doing it sometimes too fast, things can break. So, if you do have a position where, you're comfortable and you're on a decent salary and things are just great, then obviously, try and utilize that as much as possible to then build yourself up to get into your side hustle or get into what you ultimately want to do, if that is starting your own business.
Yeah, and you actually brought up a really good point then, which is, if you leave too early, like you haven't quite, got the knowledge or the experience that you might require in doing certain things on your own. Like one of the guys I interviewed a bit earlier, he literally only spent just under a year in corporate in total. And he's a young guy and he runs a very, very successful business now. But one of the toughest things he had to try and really figure out for the first time was how to manage people, because he has a lot of staff now. But when he first had to bring people on, because he had never been in a situation where he was either a team leader or a manager or just had to work in kind of that team environment for any period of time, he really didn't have any of those skills. And it was a real challenge because he knew he had to get other people involved. He just didn't know anything about it. And so he had to learn the hard way. So on one hand, I tell people sometimes if you're not happy in a particular job or whatever, like don't do it, do something you love. And, if you really want to try your hand at something, the sooner you do it, the better, rather than procrastinating and waiting, till one day you might have regrets. But also if you leave it too late, you can become institutionalized. So you could end up working for a company for 20 years and now all you can think of is very siloed, sort of one track. Like you lose that creativity and that spark, and so there's kind of like that in between sweet spot, which is I guess is different for different people.
Yeah, exactly. And there's an old, I think it's Army or Navy SEALs or American type of saying. I think it's slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So, you don't want to just, rush out and do it and, be stressing about things. So you want to do it in a obviously slow transition where it just makes sense and you're comfortable and then, you build from that.
No, awesome. So tell us a little bit about like the business that you're in now, Alex. So obviously you got into the digital marketing space, and then right now I know you're doing a lot of great work with LinkedIn, and that's your one of your big focus areas. In getting to this point, like what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in setting this business up, or how did this business kind of come together?
Yeah, good question. So initially I wanted to start more of a agency focused on many different services. So, Facebook ads, Google AdWords, SEO, full end-to-end, full service package agency. And that's where we started last year. And that was more focused to real estate agents or realtors, as they like to say over in the US, and had a whole bunch of clients over there. But what I was finding was that, focusing on many different things, you don't really master one. And so I did that for around about a year. And at the end of the year, I decided, look, there's too many things that we're offering and we're not really mastering one. So we pulled it right back and took the data and said, okay, well, I think, from the data, what it's telling us is that LinkedIn's the best channel. So started to focus more on that. And we are a B2B lead gen or lead acquisition agency, and we focus mainly on 4 verticals now, or 4 industries, being consultants, coaches, SaaS companies, and other agencies. But we kind of dropped the real estate because, again, we found that the better results were sitting within those in those 4. And so we really focused on LinkedIn. I think it is still to this day the best B2B platform, but like anything, we're always trying to take the conversation away from the platform We're not trying to utilize, perfect sales copy and perfect messaging in the outreach. We're really just trying to connect with them and say, hey, really like what you're doing, always sort of giving that value first, and then saying, hey, we'd like to explore a conversation with you if you had time. And that's where that conversation happens away from the platform.
Yeah, no, excellent. And I guess one of the ways we actually connect, well, the way we did connect was through LinkedIn. And so obviously what you do for other people, you do for yourself. And that was the way that we connected. And I must admit, I'm one of those four, in one of those four categories you talked about, the coaches, consultants, et cetera, the people that you work with. And I get literally in every day at least 5 or 6 different people that are offering their services to me in some form or the other. And like I said to you, Alex, early on, most of them I just ignore because they come across straight away trying to sell me something. And, it's almost like, let's connect. And immediately there's this long spiel about them and their service and their product. And do I want to sign up? And the minute I see that, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Now, and that's why I found your approach actually really quite refreshing. It's really the major reason why I reached out to you, was because you actually, and I understand how the system works, but I liked the fact that it was quite personal. And, in the first 2 or 3 messages, and I think I even let it go for probably a month or 2, because I was really busy doing what I was doing, but just the nature of how you did your follow-up and the way that the language was written and just it was quite a caring or what's the word, empathetic sort of way that you came across. Yep. I thought, yeah, look, I'll actually talk to you. And when I did talk to you, you came across exactly how your messages came across as well. So, that's just something I wanted to highlight on this call, which is sometimes when you get into business and you're focusing on sales and you've just got to remember, like, the other person at the end of the line isn't just a lead or a target or a client, or like, they're actually a person. And, when people are using these platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and all of that, you get so caught up in the marketing aspect of it and all of that, which you forget that you're actually talking to another human being. And, what are your thoughts with all of that? I mean, surely you've got a really different philosophy on how you operate compared to a lot of others.
Yeah, I do. And look, even I see it myself. I'm in the lead generation acquisition space, and even I get reached out to by different people saying, hey, we can help you with your processes. So it's quite funny when that happens. But you're right, people do send these long essays or really big text heavy messages with links and videos and webinars and all these different things. And it's, no one has learnt that it's, so people have to learn that it is about them and not you. You can talk about what you do and how you help people, etc., on the second or third conversation, but that first touch point has to be about them. It has to be about what are they doing, who are they, where do they work, and it doesn't have to be, again, a really long thing. Just something short and sharp, just saying, hey, Gavin, really like what you're doing in that space. The breakthrough from corporate sounds really, really fascinating. I can see that you've helped this person in this certain, this certain client in this certain industry. Would love to find out a little bit more about that. And then once you sort of get into that conversation, that's when you then can ask, hey, would you like to have a quick 10-minute call? So there's different ways to frame it, but it always has to be customized, personalized, and tailored to that specific person. And that goes across any type of channel, whether that's email, whether you're doing sell by chat through Facebook or Instagram or what have you. But it's always about putting them in that position of, hey, I want to find out more about you, and then moving forward through that conversation. And follow-up's a really big component of things as well, as you mentioned. It's not always going to be that first message is going to crack through, but what typically happens is on that third or fourth message that does, people will scroll back up to the top of the conversation and they'll say, okay, cool, this person's actually taken the time to research a little bit about me. It's not just a copy paste approach. at 1,000 per day, it's very focused and sniped approach where they've done some research, they've done some homework, and that's sort of what opens that conversation. And I think once the conversation's open, then again, it's not about what you do, who you are, because at the end of the day, it's not that no one cares about what you do, but you always have to frame it in, hey, tell me more about you. Tell me a little bit more about your journey, what your goals are for 2021, or I know 2020 has been rough. How's the business been traveling? So, if you're always framing it in that sense, I don't think that you ever have a lot of, people coming back to you saying, thanks, but no thanks. You get more conversations.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think that's a really good approach. And in the time that you and I did some of that work together, I think we got a lot of people that were actually really quite open to chatting, or at least open to connecting, and which is good. Most I'm sure they probably were very busy people, and most of the people that would have written to them, they would have just ignored. But I think the way that we came across to them, they were really open to chatting. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a client or not, but at the end of the day, at least that part of the process works. It certainly worked with me connecting with you. So, I think one of the takeaways from that little section then was, no matter what type of business you get into, so for anyone that's listening to this, doesn't matter what type of business you are thinking of or wanting to get into or are in, don't lose sight of the people that you're connecting and talking with. And obviously, they are a potential prospect in your pipeline and all of that. But I know that we can get very caught up in numbers and stats and, thinking of things like pipeline and leads and lead generation. You forget that these are actual real people. And, sometimes even to this day, I still have to remind myself when I'm sending out a newsletter to my database, and I've got a few thousand people that I send it out to, I have to write it. When I'm writing something, I'm not writing to thousands of people. I'm actually writing to one person. But
spot on.
And it's still, even to this day, I have to remind myself that the person reading this is one person, not 1,000. So even though I'm sending it in my database and it gets automated and sent out to a few thousand people, there's only one person that's going to open it at a time. And if they feel like that message is not directed at them personally, they're not going to read it, and they might never open it again. And so these are just hard lessons you learn, I guess.
Yeah, and you don't have to, be reaching out to tens of thousands of people per day with just your marketing or with what you're doing. I mean, that's great if you're doing that at high volume, but if you can reduce it and make it more customized, your open rate, your response rate, the people who actually want to have a conversation is going to increase significantly. And they'll be high quality people, not just the ones who it's just a numbers game.
Yeah, no, that's a really good piece of advice. Yeah, it's not, you don't have to do the big numbers. You just do the right quality of people and go for connections. I definitely think that's good advice. What about for people who are starting up their business for the first time? They're not really entrepreneurial. These are people that are generally have worked for other people most of their life, like been in corporate for a number of years, and times have changed now, and a lot of things have happened in the world, and so mindsets have shifted, and there's a lot of uncertainties, and in general with where business is going and transforming, and so where people's jobs and all are going to be. So there's a lot of people that are thinking, gee, what could I do next year? How should I approach this? Is there any kind of advice or tips you'd like to share, just from your experience, Alex, in dealing with a lot of different people and all that? Like, what would you say to people who are just sort of thinking about, like, what could I do, or where should I start? I know it's a bit of a tangent that we're going off here, but I just want to pick your brain on that area.
Yeah, good question. I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned over the last, not only this year, 2020 being such a crazy year, but even the back end of last year, was taking action is just so much more important than consuming content. Now, today there's thousands of podcasts, YouTubers, Instagram, Facebook, there's just so much information out there, books. And I was definitely someone who consumed a lot of content. I would watch YouTube videos. I was reading, I was listening to podcasts, reading blogs, constantly scrolling LinkedIn or Facebook, trying to find that gold nugget, trying to find that one thing that's just going to take me on the pathway to, business success or just entrepreneurial success. And it wasn't until I started implementing, and taking action, that's when I learned more. That's when you discover more.
Yeah.
That's when you find problems, and that's when you can come out with solutions, because obviously business is always about problem solution, but when you start that business, you then find more problems within the problems that you initially started with, and it's just this growing thing. And if you can create something where you then are adding on those different services, or you're making your service better, that's where you get a lot of success from. So I know that's advice that a lot of people give is, hey, just take action, but it really is that simple. Stop listening to all these podcasts, stop listening to all these, not stop listening to all these podcasts, but stop listening to so many podcasts, stop consuming so much content, because you can get analysis paralysis just by listening to so much and not taking the next step. So it doesn't have to be some giant step. It just take those baby steps, and that will snowball. And eventually, within a month, 2 months, 3 months, you'll look back and think, hey, I'm so glad I started, rather than just continuing to watch videos or read more. And books are very, very important. Don't get me wrong. I'm a huge reader, but you can read all the books and not do anything with that information. And that's where I think some people get a little bit caught up in it. Yeah,
no, it's excellent advice. I mean, with some of the people I talk to on a daily basis, the biggest thing that holds them back is they go, I don't, I haven't come up with that really good business idea, the $1 million idea. And I'm like, the thing is, there are so many things you could be doing, but until you do something, one or two things will happen. You'll either like it or you won't, or you'll find it hard or you won't, or you'll suck at it, or you'll be great at it, or something will happen if you just did it. And then from there, you'll move on to the next stage. The next stage could be the next stage in that idea. It could be a completely different idea. It might change, but you'll at least be one step further than you were, yesterday. Whereas if you constantly procrastinate and you think, I've just got to read that one more book and listen to another podcast, so I've got to read, whatever it might be to learn a little bit more, it'll never be enough, because there isn't that perfect idea. I think, like you said, you started your agency last year with certain intentions, but it wasn't until you did that you figured, hang on, that's not the right path forward. We've got to narrow our focus and maybe get really good at one thing, and maybe not have to work with realtors in the US. I mean, you made a lot of discoveries, but you couldn't have done that if you hadn't taken that first step. Yeah, exactly. And you make a lot of failures as well. Like you're going to fail at certain things, and it's not going to go 100% to plan. Success isn't linear. It's up and down, and it's backwards, and it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And, those, I think, and then taking those lessons from those is then when you start to say, okay, cool. I know that this is kind of working at the moment. How can I make it better? How can I improve on it? So it is very much about taking that next step and just applying some of the work. And I'm sure you're the same. You've done certain things that just haven't worked or you haven't liked, but that's to where you are today. Yeah, and you know what? The way I look at it now, like if I fail at, if I'm going to make a mistake, I'd rather make that mistake sooner rather than later. And I'd want to learn from that mistake, so hopefully I don't make it again. But you can't go through life and expect to never make mistakes or never have failures, because as a lot of wise people have said in the past, every failure is another step forward to success. So it is part of the journey that you have to go through. If you want to climb to the top of the mountain, you're going to have to put in the hard yards. And so, you don't just get to success without ever experienced some form of failure. And you talk to all the famous entrepreneurs out there, and all the famous athletes out there, and anyone who has made it, they'll tell you all the times that they didn't make it. Michael Jordan's a classic example. He got dropped from his basketball team before he even became a pro, and he was actually told he sucked at basketball. But had he just taken that advice, he wouldn't be one of the greatest players of his time. And so I guess it's very good advice to take action. Tony Robbins is another guy Anthony Robbins, who says, just take massive action. And so I'm someone who really subscribes to that. On another side, obviously, business can be a lonely journey, Alex, if you're doing it all on your own. Like, have you found that it's been better to be amongst people who are like-minded, people who are either on the same journey as you, not necessarily doing what you're doing, but at least you can share ideas, you can bounce things through people. So having a good network or community for support and maybe mentors and things like that. I mean, how important is that when you're in business or thinking of going into business?
Yeah, very important. I think having a mentor or having someone who you can, again, bounce ideas off, or go to networking events where you can, I suppose with networking events, there's some really good ones, there's some really bad ones. I've managed to find a really good one here in Perth, and going to those as well has been really, really beneficial. And at the moment, I do have somewhat of a mentor. They're over in Brisbane, but I've also got a fitness coach, and I think just having someone by your side to push you is really, really helpful. And someone who's gone through and done it. I suppose when you're picking a business coach or a mentor or someone to look up to, you really want to find someone who's done the exact thing that you did, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Because there's I suppose a lot out there who are just business coaches or mentors who haven't had their own business or haven't had really a lot of experience. So finding that, those types of people is important, I think, and they'll really fast track your success. So, you can take a lot of lessons from books, and you can take a lot of lessons from watching, things on YouTube and just gathering that information. But again, it comes back to taking that action. If you take the action with that mentor by your side, then again, it's going to really help to speeding up that process. Yeah,
I like the word there, fast track. That's exactly what it is. So, because you're really standing on the shoulders of someone else who has been there, done it before, and so you're just shortcutting the process. What might have taken them 20 years to figure out, you can learn from them in a few months or a few weeks or maybe a year or two. But, you can really benefit from their experience on top of your experience. And so you're now going at an exponential rate. So if you want to get results faster and you want to make less mistakes, not no mistakes, but less mistakes in life or just in general, find people who can help you in different areas. And business is obviously one of them. But, like you said, you had a health or fitness coach. Perfect. You can find someone who can help you in lots of different areas of your life. So you don't have to do things on your own. That's for sure. Yeah. And it's actually quite interesting. When I started, being a business owner, you're very focused on what you're doing the day to day. But I found that a lot of growth actually happened when I wasn't focusing a lot on the business, if that kind of makes sense. So I was pushing myself physically. I was doing a few different things outside of the business. And naturally what happened was a lot of the habits that you pick up away from the business, you start naturally or organically start implementing in the business. And that's where you see a lot of that growth. So, and that's something that I've picked up on through a lot of entrepreneurs or people who have said the same thing, that they see growth in the business when they're actually away from it and doing different things, because you can get very, very tunnel vision with the business and hitting KPIs and doing X, Y, Z, and you sort of, you become consumed in it. But if you step away from it, pick up another habit, pick up something else where you're still able to push yourself, whether that's physically or mentally, it has a knock-on effect onto your business. And it might even be something with, relationships or friends or family, whatever that looks like. It can definitely have that flow-on effect into your business. No, really, really good summary there. What about setting visions and having goals and things like that. I mean, how important is it that every now and again we don't get so caught up in the day-to-day of our business, but we take a step back and go, where are we actually going with this? What do we want it to look like? And putting a plan in place for that. How important do you think it is to have that kind of discipline when you're a business owner?
Yeah, great question. At the start of the year, I definitely had, hey, this is the 12-month goal and this is what I want to achieve, and had it all mapped out. And obviously, coronavirus had different plans for that, so things can change very, very quickly. So I think having a really, really long-term plan, 3, 5, 10 years is sometimes a little bit difficult, because if you don't hit certain things at certain times, then you can become frustrated, or that can be quite defeating. But I have a rolling 12-month plan, I would say. And I think having that set up and just making it very, very simple, 3 things within the year that you want to tick off. Again, it might be on the business, it might be away from the business. But like I said, if you're focusing on things outside of the business, then it will have a bit of a knock-on effect. So I think planning in 12-month increments, that works for me. Obviously, everyone's different.
Yeah.
In the business, people, obviously, you want to set up quarterlies as well. But I think a 12-month plan just for yourself, and you can divide, those 3 into personal and business too, then I think that's really beneficial. And again, everyone's got a bit of a different approach, but that's just what I find works.
No, that's perfect. That's really good. And everyone listening to this, if you're in business and working for someone else, or in corporate, you probably already do this with your manager. You already have, reviews and meetings and performance checkpoints and all that sort of thing. That's exactly the kind of discipline you're going to have at some point in your business to keep yourself accountable, so that you know what you're striving for, when you hit goals, when to celebrate, and things like that. So, I think there's a really good piece of advice there. Thanks for that. But Alex, now what I want to do I'm just looking at the time. Yeah, I could talk to you all day about this topic.
Yeah.
But I want to kind of get to this section which I call rapid response. Now, I do this with a lot of my guests, and it's sort of just shooting from the hip, really, just asking a few random questions just to see how you think on your feet, and whatever comes to mind, you just sort of say it, and it's just it's just a little bit of fun, really. So, are you happy to play along with us?
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah.
Cool, man. So what is your favorite mode of learning?
So something that I've been doing quite recently, which is a little bit different, is I've been reading books while listening to them. So I've got Audible and I've got the book, and I will read and listen to it at the same time. And what I'll actually do is I'll put Audible at about 1.5 times speed. And so I can race through the book quite quickly. And the good thing is that I can listen to the book while I'm in the car or at the gym or out and about, and I don't have to have the physical copy. But I find that doing audio and doing reading, it just, you soak up every piece of information, and, you actually learn, I suppose, a lot more than you are when you're reading, or just when you are listening to it. That's just a little strange, little hack for me, but that's it's combining reading and audio. Yeah.
Great. And have you got a favorite role model or a hero that you can think of?
It changes. Honestly, it changes every, I'm not sure, 6 months or so. So at the moment, I've been really consuming a lot of Warren Buffett. His thinking, I've been sort of getting into the market as well, and just his processes and the way that he operates in his business. So I would say Warren Buffett.
Cool. No, that's perfect. And I know you've probably got a lot of quotes that you've come across or shared in your time, but is there any one that kind of sticks out at the moment for you?
Great question. I know that time is the greatest asset, and I know that's probably been heard quite a few times, but I really do believe it. And really value your time, and try and make the most out of it. I suppose if you're an early riser, then utilize that time well. If you're doing some research at night, utilize that time well. But also, be cautious of your time too. Don't be, spending 6 hours off, doing things that aren't going to help you grow either personally or professionally. So, I think
Awesome.
Time is the greatest asset, I think, is one
Great.
quote that
No, great quote. Great quote. And any cause or charity that you support at the moment, or thinking of, or would like to just shout out to?
Yeah, so They Can is over in Sydney, and they help kids in Africa with their education. And they're a really, really good organisation. And so are Buy One Give One. So a lot of businesses use that. Where have you heard of Buy One Give One?
Yeah, I have. No, they're fantastic.
Yeah, they're great. And so they're probably the two that if you're looking to donate or looking to support, I'd highly recommend those two.
Awesome. And anything that you'd like to share with our audience that they may not, that you mightn't have so far, that a little bit unusual, maybe something you do in your off time, or something a little bit quirky about you that's nothing to do with business?
Great question. I would say, so I have an internal donut rating system. So every Sunday I'll go out and treat myself because I will exercise or be working hard during the week. And then I'll go and get a donut from different bakeries, and I'll rate it on a bit of a scale. So at the moment there's a place just literally down the road from me, which is a little bit dangerous, which is king of the donuts at the moment. So that's got a rating very, very, very close to 10. So I kind of keep that.
Must be a pretty bloody good donut.
They do very good donuts.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, hey, listen, thank you so much, Alex, for being with us today on our call and just sharing, your story, your experience, your learnings, and all the fun stuff that you're doing with your business. Obviously, I want you to have the opportunity to tell people, the name of your business and how they can get in touch with you if they'd like to get in touch with you. So, what is the name of your business, and what's the best way for people to either reach you or reach you through your business?
Yeah, so sellingtm.com is the business, and probably the best way to reach out to me would actually be through Facebook. Probably the most active through that, and you can add me as a friend, or you can just reach out through that way. That would be the best avenue.
Awesome, man. So, hey, listen, thank you again, Alex, for spending your time with us and sharing and all that, and all the very best with what you're doing in the business. And I think you're definitely on the right path with what you're doing. I like what you do. I think it's fantastic. Clearly, I came across as one of your clients, and I'm a big advocate for the kind of thing that you do, and particularly the way that you do it. And so I'm sure there'll be opportunities for us to do many things more in the future. But again, thanks for spending time with us, sharing your story, and we must keep in touch.
Thanks a lot, Gavin. Thanks for having me, and all the best for the rest of 2020. And let's all hope that 2021 is a really, really good year for everyone.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Thanks, Alex. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Gavin. Thank you.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye. If you like this podcast and would like to understand a little bit more about what was just discussed, then you're in luck. Simply head over to breakfreefromcorporate.com, and we have a fantastic bonus gift waiting for you to download. All we ask in return is that you leave us a review on iTunes and or Stitcher, whichever you use. And lastly, help us share this podcast around with your friends, your colleagues, through Facebook, Twitter, Google+, or LinkedIn. We truly appreciate all your support, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode of Break Free from Corporate. Once again, to access previous and all future episodes, visit breakfreefromcorporate.com and subscribe today.